Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I'm going to be showing you all about Crobat BREAK. And I have called this video The Mystery of Crobat BREAK. It's not some kind of clickbait, it genuinely is a little bit of a mystery. Now here is the Crobat BREAK, we'll talk about what it does in a moment. Now this was actually the result of a competition in Japan, where fans voted on the Pokemon they most wanted to get a break, and Crobat won, so Crobat gets a break. The mystery is why we're getting it in the UK, US, Europe, etc., when there isn't a playable Crobat. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot use this card, at least in the standard format. It is a Crobat BREAK, which means it evolves from Crobat, but Crobat was rotated, meaning it is no longer legal for tournament play. Now in Expanded, we have a very good Crobat from Phantom Forces, more on him in a moment, and in the Generation set, we saw reprints of both Zubat and Golbat, but no Crobat. Now, from Phantom Forces, the Golbat is absolutely superb. He's got the ability, when you evolve him, you get to put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Pretty nice. And his attack for 1 energy does 10 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Sorry, all of their Pokemon in general, not just bench. Sounds pretty good. And the Crobat was arguably even better. Now it was a stage 2, making him slightly slower, but when you evolve into him, you get to put 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and you get to snipe one of your opponent's Pokemon for 3 damage counters, or free damage. This one could be, the difference between damage and damage counters, for those of you that don't know, is things like Mr. Mime that would stop damage don't stop damage counters. So it is a big thing. Plus it was an ability, I suppose, rather than an attack. So things like Sceptile, which have Fate to Stop, cannot be touched by Golbat and Crobat. There we go. Nice and good. So we really need to look at Expanded here. Expanded plays Black and White on, whereas Standard plays Primal Clash on. In Standard, we don't have a Crobat right now. In Expanded, we do. So we're going to be focusing on Expanded. As a side note, we just get our cards from Japan. Japan makes the cards, we get them translated and thrown over. And in Japan, they play Expanded format generally, which means that in Japan, it's not really a big thing. They have Crobat in their tournaments. If you want to know more about Pokemon in Japan, check my Pokemon in Japan video, link in the description. So, now that we've got that out of the way, let's have a look at Crobat BREAK. You go up to 160 HP, that's pretty good. Now, he is essentially a stage 3. You've got to evolve up to a stage 2 and then break evolve. But the thing is, when you evolve into your stage 1 Golbat, you get the cool ability, people want to do it. When you evolve into your stage 2, you get the awesome Crobat ability. People want to do it. So unlike most stage 2 breaks, this is a break that people will want to evolve into. They're going to want to have the stage 2 Crobat, and then it is just one more evolution. Not as bad as most of these breaks. Things like Delphox is just slow, whereas Crobat is slow, but there are benefits in evolving him up. Now, we also in Expanded, and this is very important, we have Dimension Valley, which reduces the attack cost of all psychic Pokemon by 1 colourless energy. And given that we don't have a Crobat in Standard, so we can't use Crobat BREAK in Standard, let's just assume we're using Dimension Valley in Expanded. It brings his attack down to a double colourless, that is 1 energy. 60 damage, and then you have a choice. You may leave your opponent's active Pokemon paralysed, though you don't have to. If you do, shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. This sounds an awful lot like Excelgor. Now this is the Excelgor from Dark Explorers that for a double colourless energy did 50 damage, automatic paralysis and poison, automatic shuffle back into your deck. Whereas Crobat, you do 10 more damage, you don't do poison, and the shuffling is an option. Now, Excelgor is a stage 1 and you can use Forest of Giant Plants, making Excelgor much faster and more consistent. Not to mention the fact, of course, he doesn't need the stadium to bring his attack cost down to a double colourless. But the fact is that Excelgor is very, very good. Excelgor is a card that has been played and has been used, so that gives some potential for Crobat. Now, it is possible to make just a Crobat Break deck. Maybe you pair it with something like Vileplume to stop your opponent playing cards like Switch or Escape Rope to get out of the paralysis. But I don't think that's the best way to play Crobat here. I see this as a card whereby if you're playing something like Seismitoad Crobat, you put 1 or 2 Crobat Break in just for funsies. Now, in my previous video, I showed you the new Absol promo, link in the description, and I told you how he stops Pokemon retreating and how it's not always going to win you games, but sometimes just leaving your opponent's Pokemon stuck in the active can be huge. Same thing with Crobat here. There is nothing to stop you building a deck based around Crobat. It could be an excellent deck. My inkling is it's going to be a little bit too slow, and if you really want to do the auto paralysis thing, why don't you just go for Excelgor? But if you're going to be playing Crobat anyway, you've got Golbat's awesome ability, you've got Crobat's awesome ability, why don't you add in the opportunity for a double colourless to paralyse your opponent? If you're having a very slow turn, if you don't have what you need, if you want to just buy yourself a little bit of time, then you paralyse with Crobat, pop him back into your deck. What you could do sometimes is, even if you see your opponent isn't playing any switching cards and you can start getting a whole bunch of Crobats out, why don't you just go ahead and try and take a couple cheeky prizes using Crobat Break 2 or 3 times? 3 of these will KO a Hoopa. In fact, I take that back, 2 of them will KO a Hoopa because Hoopa is weak to Psychic. And I suppose if nothing else, it gives you a good Psychic attacker. Golbat hitting for 10, meh. Crobat hitting for 30, meh. Crobat hitting for 60, double to 120 for weakness. You never know, it could be fun. Crobat Break is not going to change the format, especially in Standard, where I reiterate, you can put it in your deck if you really want to, but you're never going to be able to play it. But you can, however, make a bit of noise and expand it. I see this as a better tech in something like Seismitoad Crobat than I do its own deck, but if you want to make a Crobat deck, go nuts. Could be fun. If you are going to make a Crobat deck, might I suggest Wobbuffet. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Use it. There are like and subscribe buttons. Make sure you click them. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy. There are links in the description to other videos and a thumbnail on the screen. Click all of them. Check out my other videos. It will make me happy. The most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.